Before we begin, this story addresses serious mental health topics. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. Crisis resources are linked below. Rebecca Morrison had built the perfect system. At 34, she wasn't just a mother. She was a data scientist who'd cracked the code on raising optimal children. Every meal tracked for nutrition, every milestone documented and compared, every learning opportunity scheduled down to the 15-minute block. Her daughters, Sophie and Hannah, were performing above their grade levels. Their developmental assessments showed exceptional progress. Other parents asked Becca for advice. But here's what you need to know about optimization. When you treat childhood like a problem to solve, eventually something breaks. And what broke would nearly cost Becca everything she'd built, including the daughters she thought she was perfecting. 2 years before everything collapsed, Becca stood on stage at a parenting tech conference in San Francisco. Optimal Kid isn't just an app, she told the audience of 500 parents. It's a framework for data-driven parenting. We track 47 developmental markers across cognitive, physical, social, and emotional domains. She clicked to the next slide, a graph showing her daughter's progress lines steadily climbing above the median curves. My daughters, Sophie 8 and Hannah 6, test in the 95th percentile across all categories, not because of genetics, because of systems. The audience leaned forward, phones out, taking notes. Becca's philosophy was simple. Childhood was too important to leave to chance. Every minute was an opportunity for growth. Every interaction could be optimized. Every developmental window had to be maximized. At home that evening, Becca reviewed the day's data on her tablet while Sophie practiced piano. 30 minutes scheduled, timer visible on the stand. "Mom, can I stop? My fingers hurt," Sophie said, stumbling over the same measure for the third time. Becca glanced at the timer. 22 minutes elapsed. 8 more minutes, sweetie. You're building neural pathways. This is when growth happens, when it feels hard. Sophie's shoulders slumped slightly, but she continued. In the kitchen, 6-year-old Hannah sat at the table with her educational workbook. Reading comprehension, 2nd grade level, despite being in 1st grade. "I finished," Hannah announced. Becca checked her work. 2 wrong answers. "Almost. Let's review these together. Remember what we practiced about context clues?" Hannah's smile faded. "Can I play outside after? After we get these right, and you complete your science observation journal. We're behind on nature documentation this week." Becca believed she was giving her daughters every advantage. The data showed it. What the data didn't show was the cost. The first sign came during Sophie's parent-teacher conference that fall. Ms. Parker, Sophie's 3rd grade teacher, pulled up Sophie's test scores. "Academically, Sophie is excelling, but I'm concerned about something else." "What's wrong?" "She doesn't play during recess. She sits alone and reads. When I encourage her to join the other children, she says she should be learning something useful." Becca's mind raced through Optimal Kid's social development benchmarks. Sophie's peer interaction scores had been declining for 3 months. Has she mentioned being bullied? No. The other children invite her. She declines. She seems afraid of wasting time. Becca added peer interaction workshops to Saturday's schedule. By December, the signs multiplied. Hannah developed a facial tic, rapid blinking that appeared whenever Becca opened Optimal Kid to log her activities. "It's stress," Becca's sister Kate said bluntly. "Your kids are stressed. They're thriving. Look at their test scores." "Sophie asked me yesterday if she was performing adequately at Christmas dinner. She's 8, Becca. 8-year-olds don't talk like performance reviews." Becca doubled down. She added meditation and stress management activities to the schedule, 15 minutes before bed each night, breathing exercises with biometric feedback. By spring, Sophie's teacher recommended a therapist. "For what?" Becca asked defensively. "Her grades are excellent." She had a panic attack during the standardized test. She thought getting one answer wrong would ruin her data. The child therapist, Dr. Lin, met with Sophie for 6 weeks before inviting Becca to a parent session. Sophie exhibits perfectionist anxiety consistent with persistent external pressure. She's internalized the message that her worth is tied to performance metrics. I never said that, Becca protested. You didn't have to say it. You measure it. Children are remarkably perceptive. Dr. Lin suggested reducing the tracking. Becca nodded politely and didn't implement any of it. Instead, she modified Optimal Kid's algorithm to account for anxiety. She was solving the wrong problem. By the following fall, Becca had invested 3 months and $15,000 into developing Optimal Kid 2.0, a version that incorporated mental health optimization alongside developmental tracking. The app now tracked their mood patterns, stress indicators, sleep quality, and emotional regulation, 53 data points per day, instead of 47. Becca presented the updated version at another conference. 3 investors expressed interest. You've created a comprehensive childhood optimization platform. This could revolutionize parenting. Then Sophie's school called. We need to talk about Sophie, Principal Martinez said, her tone grave. Becca sat in the school office, her tablet open to Optimal Kid, ready to show Sophie's progress data. Sophie had a serious incident at school this morning, Miss Parker said carefully. She's physically safe, but we're very concerned about her mental health. This requires immediate attention. The words didn't process immediately. Becca's brain tried to fit this information into her existing data framework. This wasn't a tracked metric. What kind of incident? Becca asked, her voice tight. Principal Martinez leaned forward. Sophie was found in distress in the girls' bathroom. A teacher intervened before anything serious happened, but Sophie was trying to harm herself, Becca. We've called crisis intervention. The counselor slid a piece of paper across the desk. Sophie's writing, neat and precise. I got a B on my social studies quiz. Mom's chart shows I'm below target for this quarter. I need to do better. I need to be better. I don't know what else to do. I keep failing. Maybe if I just disappeared, everyone would be better off. Becca's hands trembled. I never said. But you told her she was below target, Miss Parker said gently. What does that mean to an 8-year-old when nothing she does is ever good enough? The crisis counselor recommended immediate psychiatric evaluation and intensive outpatient therapy. Sophie sat in the counseling office, tiny and withdrawn, staring at the floor. She wouldn't look at Becca. Sophie, baby, why didn't you tell me you were feeling this way? Becca's voice cracked. Her response was barely audible. I didn't want to underperform on the emotional regulation metrics. The words hit Becca like ice water. Sophie had learned to hide her pain because expressing pain itself was tracked as a failure in Optimal Kid's system. The crisis counselor, Dr. Reeves, spoke in measured tones. I'm recommending intensive outpatient therapy for Sophie, 3 times a week, and family therapy for all of you. What you've described, the constant tracking, the optimization, the measurement of every aspect of childhood, has created an environment where Sophie doesn't feel safe being a child. I was helping her succeed. You were teaching her that her worth is conditional, that love is earned through metrics. And Sophie is internalizing that she is failing at the most fundamental level, being enough as she is. Becca tried to argue, to show her data, to prove that her system worked. Dr. Reeves stopped her. Your daughter reached a crisis point where she believed everyone would be better off without her. Your system isn't working. It's breaking her. Family therapy sessions revealed the full extent of the damage. In their second session, the therapist asked Hannah, "What do you wish your mom knew about you?" Hannah, 6 years old, said quietly, "I wish she knew I'm trying my best." "You are doing your best, sweetie," Becca interjected. "No, I wish she knew my best is good enough." Becca felt something crack inside her chest. Sophie, when it was her turn, said, "I don't think Mom loves me. I think she loves the version of me in her app." Becca tried to protest, but Sophie continued, tears streaming down her face. "The app me gets better every week. I get worse. The real me is tired and scared, and I hate piano, and I don't want to be optimal. I want to be normal. I want to feel like I'm enough just being me." That night, Becca sat in her car in the therapist's parking lot and sobbed. She opened Optimal Kid on her phone. Months of data. Charts showing Sophie and Hannah's progress, developmental scores, achievement metrics.
None of it showed that Sophie had been in crisis. None of it captured that Hannah was terrified. The app tracked everything except what actually mattered, whether her daughters felt loved and safe. Child Protective Services opened an investigation, not because Becca was abusive in the traditional sense, but because the psychiatric evaluation flagged psychological harm through excessive pressure and conditional regard, creating mental health crisis in minor child. Becca's identity shattered. She wasn't an abusive parent, she was an optimal one. Her data proved it. Except her data had missed everything important. Her mother-in-law filed for temporary custody, claiming Becca was unstable. Her sister Kate, who she'd dismissed as an average parent, testified about the girl's severe anxiety and Sophie's crisis. Becca attended a custody hearing where a child psychologist presented Sophie's mental health crisis and Hannah's chronic stress responses as evidence of Becca's harmful parenting methodology. "My client loves her children," the lawyer argued. "Love isn't the question. The question is whether these children are psychologically safe in an environment where their worth is quantified daily and failure is treated as unacceptable." One child reached a mental health crisis. The other is showing signs of chronic anxiety disorder. These are not safe conditions for child development. Becca kept custody, but with court-mandated therapy and CPS monitoring for 6 months. Becca deleted Optimal Kid from her devices. The first week without tracking felt like freefall. She didn't know if Sophie was meeting her reading targets. She didn't know if Hannah's motor skills were developing on schedule. She tried to parent by instinct, but she'd forgotten how. When Sophie asked to skip piano practice to play outside, Becca said yes, then spent an hour anxiously wondering if she was failing Sophie by not maintaining discipline. When Hannah struggled with a math worksheet, her first instinct was to find a supplemental program. She stopped herself, but had no idea what to do instead. She called her sister Kate. "Just let them be kids," Kate said. "I don't know how to do that." The silence on the line was heavy. By month 22, Sophie's therapy was showing progress. The crisis had stabilized, but Sophie remained distant from Becca, polite, compliant, but emotionally unreachable. She no longer talked about her feelings. She'd learned it wasn't safe.
Becca thought this was rock bottom. She'd given up her system, she was trying to change, and her daughter still didn't trust her. True bottom came on a Saturday afternoon in late spring. Becca found Sophie packing a small bag. "What are you doing?" "Grandma said I could stay with her this summer. I asked if I could stay forever." Sophie's voice was calm, matter of fact. "Living with you feels like being in school all the time. Even when you're not tracking anymore, you're thinking about it. I can tell. You look at me like I'm a project that's failing." Becca's legs gave out. She sat on Sophie's bed surrounded by the achievement certificates on the walls, evidence of all her successful optimization. "You're not a project," Becca whispered. "Then what am I?" Becca opened her mouth and couldn't answer, because for 2 years, Sophie had been a project, the most important project, the one Becca was determined to perfect. And in trying to perfect her, she had nearly destroyed her. Sophie left for her grandmother's house that afternoon. Hannah went too. Becca sat alone in her house, surrounded by the empty rooms where her daughters should have been. She had optimized them right out of her life. The court-mandated therapist had suggested Becca spend time in Sophie's room to reconnect with who Sophie actually is, not who you wanted her to be. Becca knelt on the floor, sorting through boxes she'd packed away when Sophie was younger, items that didn't fit Optimal Kid's minimalist, educational-focused environment. Baby clothes, board books with worn pages, a stuffed elephant Sophie had loved until Becca had suggested she was too old for comfort objects. At the bottom of a box marked pre-K memories, Becca found something that made her stop breathing, her own childhood journal. She'd forgotten packing it away, must have thrown it in with Sophie's baby things when they'd moved houses 5 years ago. The processing space, hours that evening. Becca sat on Sophie's bedroom floor as the afternoon turned to evening, reading entries from her 8-year-old self. "Today, Mom forgot to pick me up from soccer because she was working. I sat on the curb for an hour. Dad says Mom is doing her best. I drew pictures in the dirt while I waited. I made up a story about a bird who builds nests out of sticks she finds. It was a good story. Got a C on my spelling test. Mom said,
"That's okay, you tried." But I saw her look disappointed. "I studied really hard, but my brain doesn't work like other kids. Sometimes I feel stupid. Sometimes I don't care. Today, I care because Mom cares." We had pancakes for dinner because Mom was tired. Dad let us put chocolate chips in them. Mom said, "I'm sorry, I should have cooked something nutritious, but it was the best dinner ever." She laughed when Dad got flour in his hair. Becca's hands trembled as she turned the pages. "Mom is stressed about money. She works a lot. She says she's doing it for us. I wish she knew I don't need her to be perfect. I just need her to be home." 8-year-old Becca, messy and imperfect and struggling in school, had been happy. Becca remembered that child, remembered the chaotic pancake dinners, the pickup mishaps, the C's on spelling tests, the hours spent drawing in the dirt inventing stories. Her mother, Carol, had not been optimal, had forgotten pickups, served sugar for dinner, couldn't afford enrichment programs, but Becca had felt loved. Becca found a photo tucked into the journal, her mother, Carol, helping her build a fort out of couch cushions. The living room was a disaster. Her hair was messy, Becca was grinning, gap-toothed, wearing mismatched socks. In the margin of a journal page, her mother had written a note. Must have found the journal once while cleaning. "You don't waste your time, sweetheart. You spend it being a child. I'm so proud of who you are, not what you achieve. Love, Mom." Becca read it 3 times. Then she read it again. Her mother hadn't optimized her, hadn't tracked her developmental milestones, hadn't scheduled her growth. Her mother had loved the messy, imperfect C-student version of her. And that imperfect childhood had somehow produced an adult capable of building complex algorithms, earning a graduate degree, creating sophisticated software. The optimization hadn't made Becca successful. Being loved had. Becca opened her laptop and hit record. She needed to speak this aloud to make it real. "Sophie, if you ever watch this, I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was giving you everything I didn't have. Structure, optimization, a path to success. But what I didn't have, what I needed, was a mother who saw me as enough. Just as I was." Becca wiped her eyes. "My mom wasn't perfect. She forgot pickups. She served pancakes for dinner. She couldn't afford tutors or enrichment programs. But she loved the messy version of me, the C-student version, the version that drew in the dirt and made up stories and wore mismatched socks." Becca picked up the photo of her mother and childhood self. And that imperfect childhood, it was enough. It was more than enough. I became who I am not because I was optimized, but because I was loved. She looked directly into the camera for the first time. Childhood isn't an optimization problem. It's an experience. And I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to earn the right to have one. Becca stopped recording and sat in the dark holding her childhood journal. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't trying to fix anything. She was just sitting with the truth. The counterintuitive wisdom, spoken aloud to the empty room. Becca stood up, walked to Sophie's wall of achievement certificates, and slowly began taking them down. As she removed each one, she spoke the truth she'd finally understood. You can't optimize your way to love. You can't measure your way to connection. Children aren't projects to perfect. They're people to cherish. She said it again, louder, to make herself believe it. My job isn't to make you optimal. My job is to make you feel safe being imperfect. Becca joined a support group for parents recovering from perfectionism. I'm Becca. I'm a data scientist, and I measured my daughter's childhoods instead of living them. The group leader nodded with recognition. Welcome. The first step is admitting that love can't be quantified. Becca attended every Tuesday evening. She learned new language, unconditional positive regard, good enough parenting, secure attachment through acceptance. When Sophie asked if she could quit piano, her first instinct was panic. 18 months of neural pathway development wasted. But she caught herself. "Of course you can quit," Becca said. Do you want to do anything else instead, or just have free time?" Sophie stared at her, suspicious. Free time? Like doing nothing? Like doing whatever makes you happy. Sophie waited for the catch. When none came, she said quietly, "I'd like to just play with Hannah outside." Becca nodded, throat tight. That sounds perfect. Watching her daughters play in the backyard, no structure, no developmental goals, just two kids making up games with sticks, Becca's anxiety screamed at her. She texted her support group. "They're just playing, not learning, not building skills, just playing. I feel like I'm drowning." The group leader responded, "Play is learning. You're doing great. Breathe."
Becca continued individual therapy twice a week. Her therapist helped her trace the roots of her perfectionism. Working-class parents who'd sacrificed everything for her education, pressure to justify that sacrifice through achievement. "You optimized your daughters because you were never allowed to just exist," Dr. Washington said. "Your childhood message was, prove you deserve the sacrifice. You're passing that down." Becca also joined a parent coaching program for recovering perfectionists. Week 3's assignment: watch your child fail at something and don't intervene. She watched Hannah struggle with the jigsaw puzzle for 45 minutes. Hannah got frustrated, threw a piece, nearly gave up. Becca's hands physically ached from gripping her chair to keep from helping. Finally, Hannah figured it out. The joy on her face was incandescent. "I did it! Mom, I did it by myself!" Becca realized she'd been robbing them of that joy for years. Becca started doing activities with Sophie and Hannah that had no developmental purpose. They went hiking, not nature observation, just walking in the woods because it felt good. They baked cookies, not as a lesson, just because cookies tasted good and making messes together was fun. One Saturday, Hannah was drawing at the kitchen table. Becca sat down to watch. "What are you drawing?" "Nothing, just scribbles." Old Becca would have suggested drawing something recognizable. New Becca said, "Cool, can I scribble too?" They scribbled together in silence for 20 minutes. Afterward, Hannah leaned against Becca's arm. "This is nice, Mom." The hardest work was rebuilding trust with Sophie. Sophie had agreed to come home after 4 months with her grandmother, but she was guarded. Becca's therapist coached her, "Don't try to fix it, just show up, consistently, without agenda." So Becca showed up, sat on Sophie's bed each night, drove Sophie to therapy appointments, apologized over and over for making Sophie feel like she had to be perfect. The breakthrough came on an evening in late fall. Sophie was on the front porch, crying after a difficult day at school. "I failed my math test. I studied, but my brain doesn't work right." Becca's old script would have been, "Let's figure out what went wrong." Instead, she said, "That really sucks. I'm sorry you're disappointed." Sophie looked at her, surprised. "You're not mad?" "Why would I be mad?" "Because I failed." She pulled Sophie close. "Sweet girl, you didn't fail me. You had a hard test. Those are different things." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Old you would have made a study plan. Old me was terrified that if you weren't perfect, I was failing as a mom. Are you still terrified?" Becca chose honesty. "Sometimes. But I'm learning that you don't need a perfect mom. You need a mom who loves you even when you fail math tests." Sophie leaned into Becca's shoulder. "I like new you better." It was the first time Sophie had initiated physical affection in over a year. The setback came during report card season. Sophie brought home B's and C's. Hannah had needs improvement in several areas. Becca stared at the report cards and her old anxiety roared back.
She opened her laptop and pulled up the old Optimal Kid files. Her cursor hovered over the new session button. Her phone buzzed. Text from her support group leader. "How's report card season treating you?" Becca's hands shook. She typed back, "Not great. Want to track them again? Feel like I'm failing." Response came immediately. "Call me right now." Becca called. "Tell me what you're afraid of," the group leader said. "That without optimization, they'll end up ordinary. That all their potential will be wasted." Becca, what if ordinary is enough? What if B's and C's mean they're learning at a pace that doesn't destroy them? What if average, happy, and mentally healthy is the actual goal? Becca closed her laptop. "It's so hard to let go." "I know, but you're doing it. That's what matters." Becca deleted the Optimal Kid files that night, permanently. No backup. Time passage, spring arrived, month 32. By the time spring flowers bloomed in the yard, Becca noticed something remarkable. Sophie laughed more. Genuine, unself-conscious laughter. Hannah stopped blinking nervously when Becca asked about her day. Both girls had friends over regularly. The house was messier. The girls' skills were developing more slowly. Their test scores were solidly average. And they were happy. Becca was learning that was enough. The new normal. 18 months after crisis. Becca stood in front of 40 parents at a community center, telling her story. Not at a tech conference with investors, not promoting optimization, just sharing what she learned. "I'm Rebecca Morrison. I'm a recovering perfectionist parent. 2 years ago, my 8-year-old daughter harmed herself, trying to meet my expectations. The room was silent. I built an app to optimize my children's development. I tracked 47 developmental markers. I scheduled every 15-minute block. I believed I was giving them every advantage." She clicked to the next slide, a photo of Sophie and Hannah playing in the yard, messy and laughing. "Instead, I taught them their worth was conditional, that love was something they had to earn through performance, that childhood was a problem to solve rather than an experience to treasure." The teaching moment. After the talk, a mother approached Becca. She looked exhausted, overwhelmed. She said, "My son is 7. I have him in tutoring 4 days a week, plus violin, plus swimming. His teacher says he's anxious, but if I don't push him now, won't he fall behind?" Becca recognized herself in this woman's desperate eyes. "Can I tell you what I wish someone had told me?" Becca said gently, "Your son doesn't need to be ahead. He needs to feel safe being exactly where he is. But the other kids aren't your responsibility. Your son is. And right now, he needs a mom who thinks he's enough without the tutoring and the lessons and the achievements." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "What if I'm wasting his potential?" Becca thought of Sophie's laughter in the backyard, Hannah's pride in solving the puzzle alone, the report cards with B's and C's that no longer terrified her. What if you're not? What if letting him be a kid, messy and average and imperfect, is exactly what develops his real potential, the kind that can't be measured? That evening, Becca made spaghetti for dinner. Nothing fancy, no nutritional optimization. Sophie set the table. Hannah helped with the salad. They sat together, and for the first time in years, Becca didn't think about developmental milestones or achievement gaps. "How was school?" Becca asked. "Fine," Sophie said. Then, after a pause, "Actually, I got a C on my science project." Becca's old panic tried to surface. She breathed through it. "How do you feel about that?" Sophie shrugged. "Kinda disappointed, but I tried my best. And the project was about volcanoes, which are cool, even if my model wasn't perfect." Becca reached across the table and squeezed Sophie's hand. "I'm proud of you for trying, and for knowing that a C doesn't define you." Sophie smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Thanks, Mom." Hannah piped up, "I played with my friends at recess today. We made up a game called Fairy Hospital." "That sounds fun," Becca said. "Tell me about it." As Hannah described the elaborate pretend game in exhaustive detail, Becca realized she wasn't tracking anything, wasn't analyzing, wasn't optimizing. She was just listening to her daughter share her joy. And it was enough. The community impact. Becca now facilitated 3 weekly support groups for perfectionist parents. The Recovering Overachievers Parent Support Group met Tuesday evenings, 15 regular members, free, donation-based. She also partnered with local schools to provide workshops on recognizing signs of childhood anxiety caused by parental pressure. At her last workshop, 23 parents attended. 3 of them were actively using optimization apps similar to Optimal Kid. By the end of the session, 2 had deleted them. One mother, Jennifer, lingered after everyone left. "My daughter is 9. She's gifted. Tests in the 99th percentile. Everyone says I should put her in accelerated programs, get her ahead, but she just wants to read fantasy books and play Minecraft. Am I wasting her potential?" Becca thought of Sophie's C in science, Hannah's fairy hospital game, the joy she'd nearly optimized out of existence. What if her potential isn't about how far ahead she gets? What if it's about whether she still loves learning by the time she's 20? Whether she can handle failure without falling apart? Whether she knows she's loved for who she is, not what she achieves? Jennifer sat down again. "Tell me more." Becca did. The callback. 2 years after the crisis, on a Saturday morning, Becca stood at her kitchen window with coffee, watching Sophie and Hannah play in the backyard. They were building something elaborate with sticks and string. Becca had no idea what. Some kind of fort or nest or magical structure. It was messy, unstructured, developmentally questionable. It was perfect. Sophie called out, "Mom, come see what we made." Becca walked outside. The structure was chaotic, nonsensical, structurally unsound. "It was beautiful," Becca said, and meant it. "What is it?" Hannah asked. "We can't decide." Old Becca would have suggested an educational classification, a learning opportunity. New Becca said, "What do you want it to be?" "Something magic," Sophie decided. "Then that's what it is." Becca sat on the grass beside them, watching them add more sticks, more string, more imagination. Her phone was inside. No tracking, no metrics, no optimization. Just this moment, just her daughters, just enough. Sophie looked at her and said, unprompted, "I love you, Mom." And Becca knew, really knew, that love wasn't something earned through achievements or measured through data. It was just given and received and enough.
Thank you for joining me for another story here on The Turning Point. Becca's journey reminds us that childhood isn't a problem to solve, it's an experience to treasure. The deepest form of love isn't optimizing every moment of our children's lives, it's making them feel safe being imperfect, messy, and beautifully average. Have you ever looked at your kids or yourself through the lens of metrics and milestones instead of joy and connection? What would happen if you deleted the tracking apps, threw away the comparison charts, and just let them be? What if the next time your child brings home a C, instead of immediately creating a tutoring plan, you asked, "How do you feel about that?" What if you sat with their disappointment instead of trying to fix it? What if you trusted that B's and C's won't ruin their future, but feeling like they're never enough just might? Maybe you're Becca, measuring love through achievement and wondering why your children feel so far away. Or maybe you're Sophie or Hannah, performing for approval instead of living for joy, believing your worth is tied to your results. But here's what I want you to consider. What if the most loving thing you could do isn't making your children optimal, but making them feel safe being ordinary? What if your fear of them falling behind is actually stealing their chance to discover that average, happy, and mentally healthy is exactly enough? If Becca's story moved you, I'd love to hear about a time when you realized your high expectations were actually high pressure. Or maybe you're learning right now how to love without measuring, how to support without optimizing. Leave a comment below and share your story. Your turning point might be exactly what another exhausted, anxious parent needs to hear today. And if you're ready for another powerful transformation story about discovering that the thing you thought was helping your family was actually hurting them, check out our next video. We drop a new story every week that proves love isn't found in spreadsheets and schedules, it's found in messy kitchens
and imperfect moments. Don't forget to like this video if Becca's journey made you reconsider what good enough really means, and subscribe for more stories where perfectionism meets reality. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a turning point that could transform how you parent. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is close the tracking app and open our arms. I'll see you in the next video.
If this story resonated with you and you're struggling, please don't wait. Reach out to a mental health professional. The resources are in the description. You're not alone.